was your age, Mr. Meddy was my hockey coach. He was a plumber by trade. Youth hockey coaches don't get paid that well, from what I heard. But he was a plumber, and my brothers, there was 5 O'Reilly boys, and we loved to play street hockey. And I wanted to make a hockey net out of old pipe. We used to make them out of lumber, and they were too heavy to move when a car came. So I wanted to make a real hockey net out of pipe. So I rode my bike down to Mr. Meddy's plumbing office, and he was at his desk writing, was paying bills. And I asked him, I said, Mr. Meddy, do you have any old pipe I could have to make a hockey net? And he said, well, how much do you need? And I said, well, the net's going to be 4 feet high, 6 feet wide, and 2 feet deep. And he says, well, I'll look and see what I have in my yard, but I can't right now, I'm paying bills. So I'll get back to you. So I got on my bike and rode home. The next day, I was in the basement watching TV, and I saw the wheels of a vehicle pull into our driveway up the basement window. I was waiting for a knock on the door, and a minute later, the wheels backed out of the driveway. So I popped up and I looked out the window, and sitting on the grass in my backyard was a hockey net made out of pipe. Mr. Meddy had remembered my measurements, gone out into his yard, got old pipe, put it together, put it in his truck, and delivered it to me. Wasn't that a nice thing to do?
Awesome. That's awesome.
And that one example, when I was a little boy your age, was one of the best examples I could ever learn from what it's like to play youth sports, youth hockey. Because the people that are coming out and teaching you guys are guys like Mr. Meddy. They're giving their time and their energy. They could be home watching TV, they could be doing anything they want to do, but they're here helping you guys, working with you guys. So that's one story, okay? The other story is a guy named Joe Howard. When I met him, it was in 1984, I was the captain of the Boston Bruins, and we, after practice, on the bulletin board, we had these little index cards of names of kids that were in local hospitals. They would put them up there with the name of the child, the hospital he was in, the room number, and what was the matter with him. And we were encouraged after practice to take one of those cards and go visit. And it was until all the cards were off the board. And I looked at one that said Shriners. And Shriners was a walk from the garden. So I didn't even have to get in my car and look for parking downtown Boston. So, you know, I was taking a shortcut. I thought, I'll go to Shriners. I'd never been to Shriners before. You know what Shriners is? It's for a burn center. It's for real serious injuries. Well, Joe didn't have a burn, he had a train accident. He was 16 years old. He was a very good high school hockey player. And he'd been jumping trains with his friend. In the town they lived in, there was a low bridge. And he and his friends jumped off the bridge onto the top of the train and rode it to the next station. And when it stopped, they had to climb down the ladder and then come home. And Joe slipped on the ladder, metal ladder, and his legs went under the wheels of the train, and he lost both his legs just above the knee. So I got a bunch of autograph stuff. I went to visit Joe. And he was in a room with 6 beds. All of them were made military tight, you know what I mean? Like you could bounce a coin off them. They're real tight. And his bed was tight halfway up. And then his legs started here. And I'll never forget that sight. And he had tears in his eyes, he was in pain, and he was depressed. And I had a bunch of autographed junk. So I didn't really feel like he needed to visit for me at the time. I sat in a chair by his bed and I said, listen, I know that you're hurting and you're sad, but one day things are going to be better. And when you get out of here and you ever want to come into a Bruins game, here's my phone number, call me. So about 4 months later, I got a phone call from Joe Howard. He wanted to come into a game. So I set it up. He was in a wheelchair with a cousin pushing him. Maybe 3 months after that, he called me, came into a second game. And then I lost touch with him. And years later, in like 1985, I was at an alumni game. Have you guys ever been to one of our alumni games?
Yeah, I've seen you play.
Yeah. All right.
Seen you play too.
So, in between periods, we signed autographs. This young man came walking up, and he said, "Hi, Terry, do you remember me?" And I said, "From where?" He said, "You visited me in the hospital." And I'd done a lot of these hospital visits, and I also had been hit in the head a few times. So I was buying time. I said, "What hospital?" And he said, "Shriners." I had only been to Shriners once. And it was Joe Howard, and he didn't have legs. And this young man just came walking up, and I said, "Joe?" I looked at his legs, and he laughed because he knew I remembered him. He had 2 prosthetic legs. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph, and he signed it to me. He was the captain of the United States Olympic sled hockey team. They won the gold medal in Salt Lake City. So he signed that picture to me. Here's a young man that lost both his legs at the age of 16. Can you imagine that? Just imagine if that happened to you guys. Can anything possibly worse happen? Probably not. He went from that low to becoming an Olympic champion. He won 2 gold medals and a silver or a bronze. He's got 3 Olympic medals now, and I consider him a good friend. So the purpose of that story, guys, is when you go through life, things are going to be good and things are going to be bad. You don't know. You're going to get some good cards and bad cards dealt to you. There's bad news coming down the road, and you might be the winner of a lottery. But when the bad news comes, I want you to just think of Joe Howard. If he can handle that, you guys can handle anything, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
One last story. I used to be a goalie. Where's the goalie? Oh. I was a goalie, and then my mom and dad took me to a therapist, and I became a forward. I was a goalie, and my team was a pretty good team. We were playing at St. Gertrude's. We were playing St. Mary's, and St. Mary's wasn't a very good team. So the whole game was played in St. Mary's end. Down on my end of the ice was just perfect. It was pristine. And no shots on net. I'm standing there on board. At one point, St. Mary's defenseman shot the puck down along the boards, and it's coming along the boards. I watched NHL players. I thought, I'm going to go and get the puck and set it up for my defenseman. So I skated over to the boards, put my stick like this, and the puck hit my stick, and I was sliding towards my open net. And I wasn't a very good skater. That's why I was goalie. So I go running after this puck, and about 7 feet before it goes in the net, I jump on it and I gather it in. But the ice is nice and smooth. I'm sliding, and I'm looking at the referee. I've got the puck under me. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle. I slid over the goal line. We lost 1-0. And I'll tell you, I was in that dressing room, and when my teammates came in, and some of them, patted me on the leg, we'll get them next time. Don't worry about it. And some of them, if looks could kill, I'd be dead 10 rounds over, okay? It was a mixed bag. So think about that. When you make a mistake, they're gonna happen, 100 of them in a game. Think about how your teammates should react to you. How should it be? Positive, support, encouraging, right? Because the next time it could be you. It could be you making the mistake, and you want them to stick with you, not point a finger at you, okay? Mistakes are gonna happen. Stick with each other. Be positive. All right?
Awesome.
That's all I got to say, guys.
Thank you.
Have a